Did you know that Welsh is not a Gaelic language? Despite what some people believe, Welsh is actually a Brythonic language. It's definitely Celtic, but it's not Gaelic. Despite the fact that Welsh is not a Gaelic language, I see this meme floating around every year around this time when Halloween draws near and Samhain is being prepared for by many pagans and witches across the world. According to this meme, Samhain is pronounced Samhain in Wales. As a native Welsh speaker, whenever this meme popped up when I was younger, I was deeply confused. Samhain is definitely not a word that I remember ever using in the Welsh language, and if it was a word in the Welsh language, well, Welsh is a phonetic language, so it wouldn't be pronounced Samhain. It would be pronounced Samhain. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, my lovely friends, family, strangers, and whoever else seems to be watching for whatever reason. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're already subscribed to me. If you're not, well, witches can curse, you know. Today, this video is going to be delving into Calan Gaeaf, the Welsh equivalent to Halloween, or Samhain even, in some ways. To go back to this meme for a moment, I posted an entire informative post all about why this meme is incorrect, as well as an informative sheet into what exactly Calan Gaeaf is, the Welsh version of Samhain or Halloween. If you don't follow me on Instagram already, head on over there. Now a disclaimer, I've made a few videos and posts about this topic over on Instagram and TikTok already, and every single time I post about this, I always mention that Calan Gaeaf, the topic that we'll be talking about today, is the Welsh equivalent of Samhain or Halloween, and every time I say that, I get somebody in the comments going, actually, Samhain is not Halloween. So just in case you're typing away there right now about to say just that, I know. I know that Samhain is not Halloween, technically. However, for ease and comfort, I say that Calan Gaeaf is the Welsh equivalent of Halloween and also is a comparable festival to Samhain. That is because there are old traits of Calan Gaeaf that correspond and align with the way in which Samhain is celebrated both today and historically. However, in modern-day Wales, Calan Gaeaf is Halloween. It is the modern-day Halloween, the day when we go trick-or-treating and we dress up in fanciful costumes whilst partying and eating witches' fingers. Sounds like a normal day for me. So without further ado, let's delve into exactly what Calan Gaeaf is. So in Wales, we do not celebrate Samhain. We celebrate Calan Gaeaf. It's pronounced Calan Gaeaf. That E in the middle might be a little tricky for those of you who don't speak Welsh, but just keep at it. Calan Gaeaf. Calan Gaeaf falls usually on November 1st, traditionally speaking. November 1st marks the start of winter, and that's exactly what Calan Gaeaf means. Calan Gaeaf means the calends of winter, the first day of winter. It was a time of year when the farmers and the people who worked in the land and were very much focused on watching the movements of the seasons, noted the start of winter. So Calan Gaeaf literally means the first day of winter. This was a very important time of year because people depended on the seasons, the weather, and the change in the earth around them. And Calan Gaeaf was one of the times of the year when they marked the change in season, and it would have been changes to all sorts of things going on in the farm, to do with cattle, to do with livestock, to do with the crops. Everything would have had to change at this time of year in preparation for the cold, harsh, and dark winter months ahead. You might be thinking to yourself, but Calan Gaeaf doesn't fall on November 1st anymore. Calan Gaeaf is now Halloween, and we celebrate it on October 31st. You'd be correct. In modern-day Wales, if you walked up to someone and you asked, when exactly is Calan Gaeaf, they would say October 31st, because Calan Gaeaf nowadays in modern Wales is Halloween. But historically speaking, it was usually around November 1st, or was probably marked based on the weather and the movements of the sun and such. But that doesn't necessarily mean that nothing was celebrated on October 31st. October 31st was a rather spooky time of year. October 31st was known as an ysbrydnos. Now, if you've been here long enough, you've already heard me talk about the tair ysbrydnos, the three spirit nights of the year. That's what ysbryd nos means. Ysbryd, the first half of the word, means spirit, and nos means night, so spirit night. The 3 spirit nights of the year were Calan Mai, or Beltane, the 1st of May, the summer solstice, and of course, Nos Calan Gaeaf, the 31st of October. So as I've already mentioned, Calan Gaeaf is the calends of winter, the first day of winter, celebrated usually around November 1st. Now the 31st of October, the day before, would have been known as Nos Calan Gaeaf. That Nos in front of it, I know I just said that Nos means night, but Nos can also mean Eve, in the same sense as, say, Christmas Eve or May's Eve. So it's the day before the first day of winter, the eve of winter, if you wish. Being an ysbryd nos, a spirit night, Nos Calan Gaeaf was a night of mischievous trickster spirits, as well as all sorts of divinatory traditions and magical scary beliefs. If you're a Celtic reconstructionist, you might be thinking to yourself right now, well, no, actually, because historians have made it clear that Samhain and Calan Gaeaf and these festivals have very little to do with ghosts before the coming of Christianity. And that's true. Historically speaking, we have no proof, so to speak, that our ancestors that were pre-Christian ever celebrated a spirit night and a ysbryd nos at this time of year. Is it possible that certain traditions and beliefs would have carried on throughout the centuries, but evolved slowly a little bit as well? Of course. But for those of you who are very much focused on Reconstructionism and looking towards historical sources to put behind their Celtic polytheism and Celtic paganism, this might be a little strange for you, trying to look at Calan Gaeaf as a night of spirits when a lot of that comes from Christian beliefs and Christian ideals of what this time of year held. Now here's the thing, I am a Celtic polytheist, I'm a Celtic pagan. I venerate the gods of old Wales, and I do look into the pagan past, the pre-Christian past of Wales, to inform and inspire my beliefs. But I'm also a witch, and as a witch, I'm also a folk witch, meaning that I take a lot of the inspiration for my practice from old folkish beliefs, as well as old folklore and folk magical traditions and practices. I always say, for those who are new to meeting me, that my path is very much in line with what some may call the crooked path. And by that I mean that my path literally veers backwards and forwards like this, going back and forth between beliefs. I am a Celtic polytheist, but syncretized into my beliefs are also folk traditions that stem from Christian periods of history. I veer backwards and forwards between paganism, Christianity, and somewhere in the middle. And so I do celebrate and venerate this time of year with the ideals of folk beliefs stemming from all points in history, going way back to as much as we can tell comes from pre-Christian era of Wales, and into the more Christian era and modern era even. I'm also a modern day witch, I'm a modern day person, I grew up in modern day Wales, and so I have a few modern beliefs intertwined into my spiritual and magical practice as well. So I'm very sorry if you're here looking for pure, unbroken paganism from pre-Christian Wales. I won't be able to give that to you, but I can give you an insight into some old folk beliefs surrounding this time of year. So as I said, this time of year marked the turning point from summer into winter, or from autumn into winter more specifically. In Wales, July is known as Gorffennaf. Gorffennaf, literally, if you break the words apart, Gorffennaf comes from Gorffen Haf, and Haf is summer. So Gorffennaf, July, is the end of summer. The end of summer. Gorffen, end. Haf, end of summer. So after July, we're deep into autumn, and then from October 31st into November 1st, we are finally moving on into winter. To mark this momentous occasion of the turning point from autumn and summer into the cold and darker months of winter, people would light bonfires up on the hills across Wales, and the tradition of bonfires is still carried into today in some parts of Wales, even if it has changed over to be the tradition of Guy Fawkes Night in some areas as well. We still see bonfires at this time of year. After the bonfires, people would go home and be merry, have a little party with their friends and family and loved ones. They would make traditional Calan Gaeaf foods, which include things such as cawl or stump naw rhyw. The food that was created at this time of year was usually made from leftover crops and vegetables that could be made into a big meal that could feed a large family or large group of people. Now here's the interesting thing. Around this time of year, people also practiced a lot of divination. This was seen as a momentous time to practice divination, which makes sense considering it was an ysbrydnos, a spirit night, a liminal night, when the realm of mortal and the realm of spirit seemed to align together. The barriers that separated the realm of spirit and realm of mortal were virtually non-existent, if there are any barriers to begin with. And so of course this was seen as an occasion where you could tap into the realm of other and practice all forms of divinatory games and festivities. A lot of these games had to do with romance as well as death. Two sides of one coin, I suppose, morbid and romantic. The romantic side of it usually included things such as apples, where you would peel an apple and keep the ribbon of the apple in one piece, and then you'd fling it over your left shoulder, and it would land in the shape of the initials of the person you were destined to marry. Other romantic forms of divination included putting nuts onto a fire, or seeds sometimes, and watching how they would burn, and that would be a way of divining whether or not the person you were with was right for you. There were all sorts of ways that people would divine the romantic future of many people. In the stump naw rhyw, a mash of 9 sorts, a traditional Calan Gaeaf dish, people would hide a wedding ring, and it was said that whoever would find the wedding ring in their bowl would be the next to marry. And then we have divination that has to do with things such as death. Now, these forms of divination were quite morbid, but also a lot of fun. And actually, a lot of these kind of death-based divinatory practices still exist across a lot of parts of Wales, including where I was from. One version of this divinatory rite was to walk around a graveyard 3 times. Now, in my area, it was 3 times counterclockwise. You would walk around the graveyard 3 times, and upon the 3rd time, now traditionally, in old Wales, it was said that you could look through the peephole of the church and you would gain insights into who might die in the years to come in the parish or the village that you lived in. Other versions of this form of divination to find out who would die in the parish included sitting out on your porch all night on the night of Nos Calan Gaeaf, and while you sat there, a procession of the people who would die in the coming year in the parish would pass you at some point during the night. Now, let's go back to the graveyard tradition, the walking around a graveyard 3 times, because as I said, this tradition persisted in the area that I'm from, and I actually did it when I was a child. My mother did it, my mother's mother did it. It was a tradition that persisted, and is still practiced to this day as far as I know. However, in my area, it wasn't that you had to look through the peephole and see who might die in the next year. Instead, it was said that after you walked around the graveyard counterclockwise 3 times, one of 2 things would happen. Either you would see a bucan, a ghoul or a monstrous creature in the graveyard, or the statue of an angel that sat on top of one of the gravestones would come to life and look at you. Very Doctor Who, before Doctor Who did the Weeping Angels, I suppose. And as I said, I did that tradition. I remember doing that tradition on Nos Calan Gaeaf, the 31st of October, walking around the graveyard 3 times with my friends. These are traditions that persist to this day, a living tradition. So, as we've already established, Nos Calan Gaeaf was a spirit night. It was a time when trickster spirits abounded. It was also the celebration of the transition from the warmer months into the colder months of winter. Beyond that, it was also seen as a time to honour your ancestors. In Stations of the Sun by Ronald Hutton, he outlines a practice that was done in Carmarthenshire of leaving bread in the window for your ancestors as an offering, and you would also say words such as, "This is what I give you this year, may you bless thy whole family." So it was a practice of venerating your ancestors, remembering them, remember those who have passed and crossed over, but also asking them for the blessings for the year ahead. So, if you are a pagan or a witch who practices a form of magic which is inspired by the Welsh continuum, I invite you, maybe move away from Samhain and instead go forth into Calan Gaeaf territory. If you'd like to read more about Calan Gaeaf, I very much recommend reading Stations of the Sun by Ronald Hutton. And you can also pre-order my book, which is coming out in February of 2022. I have a whole section on Calan Gaeaf somewhere in that book. If you can't wait until February of 2022, I have also created 2 in-depth videos that go deep into the lore and traditions of Calan Gaeaf over on my Patreon. It's a 2-part video. Part 1 delves into the lore, the history, and the customs and traditions of Calan Gaeaf, whereas Part 2 delves into a practical approach, how I practice as a Welsh witch, and some suggestions for how you could practice if you're a pagan or a witch practicing at this time of year. If that interests you, the link to my Patreon will be down below. You can join for as little as £1. However, the videos such as the one for Calan Gaeaf are for the higher tiers only of £10 or $10, I think it is, $15, something like that. Have a look down there, you'll see. My patrons get access to exclusive content every month, as well as early access to all of my videos. I haven't given them early access to this one because I made it very last minute because someone asked me to create this video, and they've already had 2 parts worth of Calan Gaeaf videos this month, so I didn't want to inundate them with that. Over on my Instagram, I've created a guide to a practical approach to Calan Gaeaf, how you can practice it, and I've created a few posts where I've talked about a few traditions surrounding Calan Gaeaf, the Welsh Halloween. I've also created a few videos over on my TikTok account. So do make sure that you follow me across platforms, because I do post things elsewhere, not just here on YouTube. If you liked this video, please click subscribe. I'll be back very soon with more videos to do with everything to do with Welsh magic, myth, and witchcraft. Calan Gaeaf Hapus idych chi gyd. A happy Calan Gaeaf to you all. Bendithion arnych. Blessings upon you. And keep an eye out for the hoch dde the black-tailless sow. Yr oedd Will a Lewis Leision yn gwella bachau crochon, a siorsi Will a Sioni Sam yn siarad am ysbrydion, yn sôn am rach y rhipin, y tylwyth teg a'r goblin, a ryw gyhyraeth drwg ei nad a gadwai'r wlad mewn dychryn. Sing di wac, fal di riddle di rai, do. Calan Gaeaf Hapus.